Welcome back to the Peruvian Waltz podcast. I'm your host, Luis Scola, joining you here from Buenos Aires, Argentina. And I'm joined by my co-host, Peter Galindo. I'm actually Brian Birdie. Sorry about that. I know I fooled you. I know you thought it was Luis Scola, but I'm not. I know it looked like it, but I'm not. I'm joined by Peter Galindo. How are you, Peter?
I think Christopher's facepalm just says it all there. I'm doing well. Nothing else to say. That was I don't know what kind of an opening that was. I don't know if it was fantastic or terrible. I'll let Christopher decide. So yeah.
I am the very ashamed co-host, Christopher Viscardo. That does not compare himself to NBA celebrity.
Hold on, Christopher. I'll introduce you. So I'm Christopher Viscardo. How are you, Christopher? You self-introductory man.
I'm doing well. Joining you from a different place, as you can see, and also sporting my away kit today, getting ready for that good game against Australia.
Speaking of Australia, they've released the World Cup squad, and that's the first thing we're going to talk about in this podcast.
Oh, segue.
So first things first. Australia, they're a decent side. They're not great. They're going to be very unidentifiable, though, I think, in this World Cup, because they've been playing with a set system for the past 3 years now, I want to say. And they're going to have a new manager who's just going to change everything up, and he doesn't have much time to do it, because Ange Postecoglou retired. He resigned right after the win over Honduras. So just going to quickly get up the squad here, because I completely forgot to do that pre-pod. Peter, why don't you start while I get this up on what you think of the squad, and what do you think, who should be a danger man, and how do you think you're going to approach the game versus Peru?
Yeah, so one of the interesting parts about this squad, for those of us who, like me, have kind of kept track with what Australia's been doing, is Ange Postecoglou had basically identified what was almost like what Gareca did with Peru, like an ideal 23 players that he always calls up, and then a set 11, maybe with the odd change or two depending on suspensions or injuries. But Van Marwijk has given opportunities to a lot of young players, many of them based in the A-League. There is still a problem at right back, so he's been trying to call out different players to fill that hole. He's gone away from the 3-5-2 that Postecoglou deployed into more of a 4-2-3-1. And based on the two friendlies that Australia played, I believe it was against Norway and Colombia, they did not look too comfortable in it, which you can totally understand because it's brand new for them. And in terms of how they'll approach the game against Peru, you would assume they're going to deploy this system that kind of mirrors what Peru's going to do as well. But I don't have too much confidence in their chances against them. They do obviously have some very, very good players. I look at mainly at Tom Rogic as the one player I think who can really hurt them. He has shown up in most big games for Celtic, be that in the Champions League or in the Old Firm against Rangers. And he has a knack for scoring against Rangers in the Old Firm, and he has also had a knack for scoring a big goal for Australia as well. So that's one player that I think, and he's definitely going to be on this squad, that's one player that Peru should really be watching out for come the World Cup.
Tom Rogic is a bit weird, though. I could see him starting at the World Cup now with a different manager, but with Ange Postecoglou, he wasn't starting very much. It was always Irvine Moy, and I think Therese wasn't sub. I think the third one was Milligan. I know Milligan was in the midfield, he was in defense, actually. I forgot about that. He was usually in the midfield, but he was playing in the defense for Ange Postecoglou. Sorry about that. Right, it was Jedinak, Irvine, and Moy. That's what it was. But I think Rogic is going to start now. Problem with Australia is you have a load of midfielders, and I think Rogic is definitely the second best, but I think he plays a little bit too similarly to Moy, in my opinion, and that's kind of a problem for them. So now, as for the right backs, I do agree that they've struggled there, because I think Josh Risden in particular hasn't had the greatest season with Western Sydney Wanderers this year, especially when we consider Western Sydney missed out on the playoffs this season in the A-League. So that's not the only reason. I've seen Western Sydney. I didn't think it was that great this season, but I think that's definitely the flank to exploit. As long as you're not Flores as the number 6, then we'll be fine there, I think. Now, I could go on and rave about Arzani being on the squad, but this is not an Australia podcast. This is a Peru podcast, but I do kind of hope he doesn't get selected. He's a live wire, I have to say. He is He's a talent. He's the next upcoming Australian talent. He reminds me a lot of some of the players we have. Very technical, very hard to stop on the ball, and yeah, he's just dynamic. He goes forward all the time, never looks back. And yeah, of course, we also have to talk about Tim Cahill. Now, Tim Cahill, well, would it be good if they leave him out of the squad, or do you think they should put him in the squad and that would be better for us? I don't know. He's way past it in my opinion, but he's also clutch in big moments, like he was against Syria, for example. Christopher, what do you think Tim Cahill, if he's in the squad or out of the squad, will benefit Peru more?
Nah, I don't think we have a reason why we should be scared of Cahill. It's I kind of compare him to like our Pizarro situation a little bit. And of course, it's obviously different that Pizarro hasn't been in the national team for at least 2 years, while Cahill does have regular appearances with the Socceroos. But honestly, I think his age, I mean, he's past his prime, and even though any player can have moments of talent, of spark, of deciding games, I think that Peru can do a pretty good job controlling him. I mean, he doesn't really worry me as much as the young guy from Croatia that they just recently called up. That what I thought was kind of an interesting call up, and something that the Australian media was also talking about was Karicic, right? I believe he is probably 19, and just like you said about Arsani, I don't think he's going to make it to the final squad. But it's also interesting to see that the Australian coach right now is using his preliminary call-ups, kind of what we said that Gareca might do with the Peruvian call-ups, kind of showing some of those young players, giving them a thumbs up that they're doing the right thing, that they're going in the right direction, and kind of rewarding them. Now, I don't think Arsani or Kersic are probably going to make it. Like I said a second ago, someone else that I did want to bring up, though, was someone that I thought was very interesting, especially in the game against Colombia that they played in England, Massimo Luongo. I don't know about you, but he looked really good with the ball. And he had a few of those plays where he really gave a lot of grief to the Colombian defense. I don't know if you guys know about him.
Yeah, no, Luongo, I'm quite familiar with him. I completely forgot, but he was actually the other defender that Angie Postecoglou used. He liked to use 4, I think. I said Jedinak, Moy, and Irvine, but there was just Luongo in there because he uses a very weird system, but he tried to make use of Australia's midfield depth as much as possible. So Luongo, another one to watch out. I think one that I really like, a lot of Melbourne Victory fans are going to disagree with me, but I think James Torrisi is one of the best players on the squad. Melbourne Victory fans don't like him. Don't know why. He's a brilliant player. Every time he's played for Australia, he's been absolutely brilliant. Peter, are there any other danger players we should watch out for? Do you agree with me and Christopher on Luongo and Torrisi?
Yes, I do. Both quality players. The one thing I would disagree with, though, that Christopher brought up is on Cahill. I don't necessarily disagree with the notion that in general he won't be dangerous, but we also have to remember Peru is absolutely awful at defending set pieces and crosses, and Cahill is tremendous in the air. And even as he's approaching 40 years old, he is absolutely impeccable at getting his head to a ball in the box. So that is one area that I think Peru should be really careful in, especially when Cahill is on the pitch, because that is one area where Australia could really hurt the national team.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's, if you remember, I know he's, like he said, he's 40 years old, but if you remember in the last World Cup, Chile was 2-0 up against Australia, but Cahill absolutely slaughtered them in the air. And that Chile's similar height problems that Peru has. So we got to watch out for those.
Well, but the best defense is offense. I think that if Peru keeps the ball on the ground with that Peruvian style of theirs, and they do not let Australia find those set pieces, then hopefully that shouldn't be too much of an issue.
Well, we gotta remember that Chris Wood gave us a lot of trouble too in the air. So if Chris Wood give us trouble, imagine what Cahill will do. I mean, I know Cahill's shorter and Wood, but I think he's better in the air, much better, in my opinion. The thing is, Cahill wasn't as fast as Wood, though. At least not anymore. So that's the good thing. That's the thing I'm relieved about, I think. And yeah, Australia should be an interesting game. Denmark and France have not released a squad yet, so we're not going to talk about them right now. And we should release the squad on around the 14th. That's what I read. Our squad will be around the May 14th. So look out for that. So we won't do a preliminary squad 3.0. That's pretty much done. We might do and this is just a might. We might pick our 23 players. That might be kind of pointless because we know who they're going to be, but maybe we'll have a surprise too. So we'll see. So, anyways, the next one.
Before we move on, one more thing. I just obviously I'm not an Australia expert, but just I did try to analyze a little bit of the squad, and I counted about their team. They released a list of 32, right? At least 25 of those players were 25 or up, and at least 7 of those players were 30 or up in age. Okay. Also, most of them playing in only 5 play in their local league from the call-ups. Most of them play in Europe and Asia, and in first division top leagues in Europe, I think I only counted 1, maybe 2. So it kind of made me feel like it was a bit similar, like Peru's call-ups will probably be, but with the difference that in general, I think our players are younger than theirs.
Yeah, no, we definitely are in the middle of a bigger process. I think Australia has kind of stagnated over the years. Maybe not as good as the 2006 side. I think that was definitely their golden age. But 2015 was very good. But since then, they've gotten a little bit worse. They've not kept it the same. I guess they've been really stagnant. But they're still a good side, and they're a team that can give the big teams a lot of trouble. Like they gave Chile a lot of trouble in the Confederations Cup, and. Well, no, I'm not going to say Germany because they lost in that Confederations Cup game, and I thought they were awful too in that game. So that was that's definitely we just got to watch out for them. So we definitely can't underestimate them because that would be a mistake, especially against sides like them who can be effective. Well, at times it depends on they're a bit inconsistent, but discussion for another time. Anyways, let's move on. So we're going to talk about the Torneo Verano final, the first leg. Sport Oncayo drew 1-1 in Sporting Cristal with the goals by Carlos Neumann and Gabriel Costa. So, Christopher, I want you to get your thoughts on this game first. What were your takeaways from this? What were some key things you wanted to bring up, and what are your expectations for the second leg?
It was actually quite an interesting game. It was really enjoyable to watch. I think that Cristal did a pretty good job, even though they were supposed to be, struggling because it's in Huancayo and because there's altitude and all of that. I think they actually showed us a pretty decent game. Both sides played really well. I wanted to point out, especially I would say Jandesa had a really good game for Huancayo. I was actually kind of surprised because he's kind of been on the down low and kind of. He seems to be starting to become a regular for Huancayo. It was really interesting. It kind of reminded me of it back in the day when he was with Peru team in 2013 with the U20s and how good he was at that tournament. And it kind of reminded me of his whole days. I think Huancayo was relying heavily on him and he was doing a good job. But unfortunately, he doesn't seem to be quite in shape yet to play full 90 minutes. And you could really tell the difference in the field once he left, and once he was taken out and replaced by can't remember who he was replaced for, but it felt like Huancayo kind of died down a little bit after that, and they weren't as well as they had been playing before. But honestly, I think if there was between a win and a draw, like I really like the fact that we saw a draw in Huancayo because that's going to make the final in Liga even more interesting because honestly, either team has good chances of winning the game, and we are for sure going to be seeing either a win by either one of the two teams or penalties. And I think that if we had seen one of the teams, like Huancayo win in Huancayo and then Cristal win in Lima, it would have been kind of anticlimactic to just have that go to penalties, So I mean, I think it set itself up for a good game in Lima.
Yeah, I agree with every point there. Jandesa definitely did surprise me. I thought he didn't really have it in the tank anymore, but he still does. He's still a quality player. We did get a question relating John Dessa. We'll get to that in a little bit, but yeah, no, it was a good game. I think Yuya was the player of the match, or at least the player for Huancayo. The player of the match is probably Johan Madrid, in my opinion. And Yuya was just impeccable that night or that afternoon, or whatever you want to call it. But he was so good on the dribble. Well, Cristal couldn't stop him. Basically, the only problem with Yuya, and this is kind of a concern I have overall as him because it seems to be an ongoing problem. His final pass is a bit poor, and he was, like I said, he was impeccable. But why didn't he impact the game more? Because his final pass was poor. He made some good crosses, but whenever he had to pass it on the ground, it was always a misplaced pass, and it was that's my main worry for him if he's ever to move somewhere else, because that's a mistake that you probably can get away with in other places as much. So yeah, he's a really good player, but he's gotta get it better with his end product. I think it's grounded in product, anyways. Peter, what are your thoughts on this match? Do you agree with me and Christopher?
I do. Jean Dessa was definitely surprisingly brilliant. I will say that. Yuya, completely agree with you on there. I think I saw, just building on your discussion about his final ball in the final third, I think he only completed, maybe a third of his passes, like in and around the box on the ground. I was counting after a while, and at least in the second half, that's what the number came out to. And you know, he was still fantastic, no question about it. And I think Huancayo definitely played well enough to win that game. And if they play like they did in the first leg, then they can easily come out victorious in the second leg as well. But this was just a classic Sporting Cristal performance in that they bend but don't break. They circumvent their weaknesses by just quickly getting the ball up to their difference makers. And in this case, in the game, it was once again Gabriel Costa, to a lesser degree Flavio Gomez, Calcaterra also to a lesser degree, and of course Herrera, who kind of had that slightly lucky deflection that fell to Costa for the goal. But it's so interesting when you look at Cristal's kind of shooting numbers. They are incredibly clinical. They have finished, I think it is 28% of all their shots have turned into a goal. And if you take away one match where they attempted an astounding 25 shots, I think it was against Ayacucho in this game, then they end up having about a 32% conversion rate. So basically a third of all their shots end up becoming goals. And they average 11 or 12 shots a game. And guess what? They had 12 shots in this game and actually had more shots on target than Huancayo did. So that just kind of goes to show you how wasteful Huancayo were, because basically any other day you would almost favor them to win, especially going up against two center backs like Merlo and Revolredo, who I think Revolredo, anyways, in his case was all right. And Madrid, as Brian mentioned, was quite solid. Out of all the Cristal defenders, probably the best one.
I also wanted to mention that I don't think the two let's say marquee strikers, they didn't perform very well. I thought Herrera was kind of I'm not going to say isolated. He definitely wasn't isolated, but I thought Colombo had him in his pocket. I thought Colombo did really well in that match.
Yeah.
He still got the assist. That was a pass, Peter. It was not deflected. I thought it was deflected too, but it was actually a pass.
Yeah.
And it wasn't an assist because Costa got the shot first and it was saved, and then he got another shot. So it technically wasn't an assist. But I thought Herrera was marked very well by Colombo, and it was a part of the defender who gave him the most trouble all season so far. And I thought Neumann in general, unlike Herrera, I thought he was actually poor in general. I thought his headers were always going upward and never heading towards anything. It was just nothing. The crosses were good, but he was always kind of marked by, I want to say, two players, maybe two. I don't exactly remember the situations he was in, but I remember the headers were always upwards and it just wasn't heading to anything. So Neumann was poor. The two strikers were quite poor, and I also think the two fullbacks were quite good as well. Corrales and Click, they did well going forward, but overall it wasn't the most. I mean, the first half was kind of dull. The second half was a lot better, in my opinion. It was a more tactical clash, if anything. I thought I've always preached about how Huancayo is a fortress at home, but this season they've not been that. This season they've been better away from home, which is kind of weird when you consider their history. They're usually a terrible away team, and this season they've been lethal away from home. So Cristal's got to watch out for that, but it's going to be a lot harder to beat Cristal away from home than Real Garcilaso, who have been shocking this season. So I think this is definitely a test. Definitely a test to see who is the best team in Peru for the moment. So I can definitely see the some of the teams getting picked apart in the transfer window, which we can talk about that a little later. But first, we got one question about relating this match, or John Dessa rather. Peter, could you read that for us?
Yes, we did. Abel Gamarra at Avelanda81 asked us, is it too late for John Dessa to reach his potential? I know Christopher mentioned it kind of slightly there, but so Christopher, if you want to maybe continue the point you were maybe alluding to, you may.
So, yeah, I mean, I've always... A lot of people in Peru talk about Raymond Manco, right, as the promise player, the next Messi that we never had. To me, a generation later, maybe, to me, that player would be John Dessa. I think he had a bright future after that South American Championship, where we saw Jordi Reina go abroad, where we saw Cristian Benavente join the national team. I mean, a lot of the players from that generation, including Oreja Flores, kind of succeeded, and Jan Deza unfortunately had that Peruvian boy attitude of going abroad and just disappearing off the face of the earth, right? And he went to France, he went to a few other countries in Europe, and he disappeared. Honestly, I think, I'm not sure, but the rumor is that it was kind of like a Gomez situation that never got better, right? Just the poor discipline, that wouldn't show up to the stuff that, to trainings. He would show up to late, a few days late. He would report late to his team when he needed to come back. And so is it too late? I don't think so. I think it's too early to say right now, obviously. I think he's just barely coming back. He was supposed to play for Sport Huancayo last season, and he did not, and I'm not going to forgive him for that.
Rosario.
What was that?
Sport Rosario, you said Huancayo.
Oh, Sport Rosario. Yes, Sport Rosario, most certainly. And so the fact that he's coming back, let's give him a chance first. He had a good game, right? Let's see him play 90 minutes. Let's see how he does this season. And if he has a decent season, I see him moving to a bigger club in Peru, one of the big three, hopefully, right? And if he moves to the big three, then we can start talking about, okay, maybe he going abroad again. But so, I mean, basically what I'm trying to say is that I think this is still a few years in the making. I think he's not that old. He must be, 24, 25 right now?
24.
Right?
Yeah.
24, right. So I think he has plenty of time. I think even 26 might be a little bit late, but at 26 you can probably still make the jump abroad, and that's kind of where I would expect him to make that jump. So let's not get our hopes up yet. Let's just observe him a little bit more and see where he goes.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I just we double-checked his age. He is 24 years old. And I was just double-checking where he started. He started at Cantolao, so I don't think he'll go there now because Cantolao is kind of below the football ladder than
Huancayo.
Yeah, but Sport Boys might be an option because he's from Callao, so that could be an option, but you never know. So, yeah, if you guys don't have anything else to add to this match, I guess we can move on to the Prove the Broad section. Do you guys have anything else to say, Peter?
I do actually have one thing to say that we do need to mention, and it was probably the moment of the match for me. You said Neumann didn't really do too much. Picking up the dog, Brian, come on. Picking up that dog was nothing. And it was amazing. He just picked him up like it was nothing, gave him to the stadium worker, and that was it. He didn't want to waste any time. It was amazing.
The dog was Mario Salas' dog. That's what rumor has it. He threw the dog in the pitch to time waste. And unfortunately for Huancayo, it worked in his favor. So Neumann got the dog as quick as possible off the pitch.
That was amazing.
It was a great moment. But anyways, it's going to prove into broad. So I guess we have a lot of time to discuss this. So I guess we could start with something that we didn't really plan before this pod. Edwin Zavila's situation. He was linked to Alianza for a while, but rumor has it that he's told Alianza, no, I'm not going back to Peru. I'm staying in Mexico. So it's going to be weird. Peter, if Lobos BUAP stays up, if they pay the money they need to pay to stay up, because there's this whole problem with the Segunda División teams or the Liga Ascenso teams, the Ascenso MX teams, whatever you want to call it, that they can't go up because of the licensing. Mm-hmm. Avila, if he's, do you think he's staying at Lobos Bob, or do you think another Liga MX team is going to pick him up?
Oh, no, I think he'd stay. I mean, he had a contract there permanently, right? And I think that they do like him. They value him. I know that a lot of people just kind of looked at the numbers that they hadn't seen him, and they look and see, well, okay, he didn't really score very much. He scored 1 goal in, 15, 16 games and assisted 3 times. That's not very impressive, but he played a completely different role than what he played at Cristal before he left for Mexico. More of a second striker, more of a selfless, getting everybody involved type of striker. And I think it really helped Lobos' attack. The problem is, once Quiñones stopped scoring goals, once Gabriel Cortés was taken out of the 11, then the attack really, really suffered, and Avila basically had no one else to really pass it to. And Lobos, as a team, I think really suffered as a result. But I think that if they do stay up, if they paid the $6.5 million to stay in the first division, which I believe they only have another week to actually meet that, then yeah, absolutely he'll stay. If not, I could maybe see another team sort of in a Lobos situation. I'm looking mainly at maybe not Chivas, because they're looking at Chicharito, for God's sakes, but
Chivas can't even sign. Yeah,
exactly.
Can't sign Peruvian players.
They also can't sign non-Mexican players. But
that's what I'm saying.
Someone at that level in the table would definitely take them. Other than that, yeah.
You got us there. If you wanted a reaction, you got it. It's like when Peruvian people started linking Rui Diaz to Chivas. I mean, that was just
that was amazing.
Like, okay, you guys don't know anything about Mexican soccer, but anyway, just kidding. No, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about people in Peru in general.
Just looking at profiles. It's like they just look at the 2 biggest clubs. It's like, oh, this club is big. We're gonna link it to them. This is not to criticize Peruvian papers. I have respect for them as much as possible, so I try to, anyways. So Guerrero got back on pitch. That's big news, right? Christopher, why don't you give your thoughts on this? Let's not talk about the actual court jurisdiction, whatever you want to call it. Instead, let's talk about his return to the pitches and what could it mean for his morale if he gets banned again.
What I liked is that the coach could have put him as a sub on like the 85th minute, just kind of a symbolic coming back to soccer, to the professional game. But instead he put him in a 50 to 60th minute about, right? 60th minute. And so I think he really showed Guerrero that, look, you still have the team's trust. We still trust you. We believe that you're a player that can actually change this, things for us, and you're not just like a super sub. So obviously, I think he needs to take it easy. He needs to, keep training, and then I think there's plenty of games between now and the World Cup for him to kind of get back to tip-top shape. But I think the fans had a great reaction, right? I think the coach put him in at the right time to show him that he's actually an important player, not just someone to kill time. And from what I saw, his form was pretty good. I mean, for someone that hasn't played a professional game in that long, he had a pretty decent game. So I am hopeful that things will work out for him, and I think that it was something nice to see him come back.
The good news is also, adding to that point, because he was a super sub technically, in that game over the weekend, there are reports that he's going to start on Thursday against Ponte Preta in the Brazilian Cup. So that is great news. And completely agree with Christopher on all those points. And I think the great thing to see from Guerrero coming back onto the pitch for the first time was the fact that he looked like a man possessed. Like he just had an extra, and as you would expect, right? He's been out for 7 months because he was injured before the ban came down. We were all wondering, is he going to be fit in time for New Zealand? Well, it didn't end up mattering, of course. So, he's been kind of like a cage tiger for 7 months. And then the fact that you have everybody questioning his innocence and all that, he comes back onto the pitch and he just completely transforms Flamengo's attack. Enrique Durado, I watched the game in full on Monday. Enrique Durado was doing absolutely nothing up front. As soon as Paolo came on, the attack was amazing. And he was doing the typical Paolo stuff. He was holding up the ball, getting his teammates involved, created a couple of chances with that, had a free kick that just missed wide, had a shot that went way over the bar, but we won't focus on that. And, he was drawing fouls and just being a general nuisance for the opposing defense. It's exactly what you want to see from Paulo Guerrero, right? So the fact that he's going to be starting on Thursday is, at least allegedly at this point, is great. And I will wrap it up before I let Brian speak. Brian, how was that theory that they don't want Paulo to play anymore for Flamengo?
We'll wait till Thursday, but Enrique Guerrero is Brazilian, so that might win him a spot. Who knows?
Well, he sucked. So, unless they want to keep blowing it, then sure. All right.
Can't believe he was some people calling for him to get a Brazil call last year. He's just another Joe. Come on, let's be honest.
Oh, yeah.
They'll score goals. They did nothing else.
He didn't even score goals. God, he was poor in that game. He was terrible.
Anyways, another thing we should bring up, there's a lot of Peruvian abroad move this week. There's a lot of Peruvians abroad news this week. Jefferson Farfán won the title, and I saw a few stats, and it surprised me. I forgot they won titles at all his clubs except for Schalke. Well, and Al Jazeera, but I don't count them, so I didn't count them.
That's something we all want to forget. That whole Saudi Arabia thing.
That wasn't even Saudi Arabia, so that just tells you how much it mattered to us. It was the United Arab Emirates.
Close enough.
That's fantastic. Yeah,
I'm ashamed of myself. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's fine. We all
don't be. Nobody. I don't think anyone knows where that club is from. Some Arabic country.
Our fans in Saudi Arabia must be raging right now.
Saudi Arabia has some big clubs in Asia, to be fair. Al Hilal is one of the biggest clubs in Asia, but Al Jazeera isn't, as far as I'm aware. But that's what this pod is about. Jefferson Farfán has won a title in most of his clubs. He's won a title in 3 of his 5 clubs. Let's put it that way. That's not taking away his brilliant football Schalke either, but you want to think 2 titles with Alianza. He won, I think, 4 with PSV, and now with Lokomotiv, he won 1. I don't know who they dethroned, but that Zenit side looked really good at the start of the year. Everyone was raving at all the Argentinians. Then Lokomotiv comes and wins the league. Now, to be fair, they have a really good squad. I really rate the 2 Marichuk brothers. I rate Fernandez. I rate Jefferson Farfán, of course. So I guess it doesn't come to a real surprise that they've won it, but they just broke a hoodoo. They broke a, I think, 13, 14-year hoodoo that win the league.
14 years.
So it's Farfán definitely has it. I don't think Farfán's the main reason they won it, because they have some really good players, like I said. But him coming in was part of that overhaul that they did, and they won the league because of that. So I'm glad. I thought Farfán was finished, but he had a slow start at Lokomotiv, and then he kind of just gradually gained form. He got better and better. So great season to him, and I hope he keeps up for the World Cup. What do you guys think, Peter? I'll let you talk. You haven't been able to talk too much today.
Well, first of all, I think he was absolutely a main reason why they won. He's their top scorer in all competitions, top scorer in the league. He was a threat even when he hasn't been scoring, which he hasn't been over the past few weeks. I think he is kind of the glue that's held that attack together in a lot of ways. Because he's played on either flank, he's played in the number 10 role, he's played as a false 9, and done a very good job in all 4 roles. And I think for Yuri Semen's side, he's been terrific. Because, Spartak Moscow won the league last year. Carrera, the former assistant of Antonio Conte, took over the team and basically won it in a near landslide. Lokomotiv, which I believe was actually led by a former assistant sporting director at Schalke, which is why Farfán actually ended up on the team in the first place, because, of course, he knew him from his time at Schalke. The side was completely transformed. And, it's kind of, I think, a completion of a journey for Farfán, in that when he went to the UAE, we all figured that, okay, he's probably going to collect his paycheck. Fair enough. Athletes are entitled to make as much money as they possibly can in what is a very short career. Right. He's going to go back to Peru, maybe go back to Alianza for a couple of years, and then retire. But to his credit, he went back to Europe. He challenged himself. He overcame yet another long-term injury, which he has been plagued by for a number of years in his career, unfortunately. And he became the leading man on the side, got back into the national team. A lot of people were kind of, there were mixed reactions about it. I know Brian was a little bit iffy about it, and it was totally fair enough. but he silenced his critics. And if it wasn't for Farfan, let's be honest, Peru might not have, or at least would have had an even bigger challenge against New Zealand. Because that goal against New Zealand, I think you heard it in Peredo's voice, rest in peace, Daniel Peredo. And you also saw it in the Peruvians' reaction that his goal just kind of relieved everybody's tension. And it was like, okay, finally we got that goal. Peru can play the way that they want. And, obviously they ended up winning it and qualifying for the World Cup. So it's nice to see that his hard work and his dedication and kind of rediscovering himself at the age of 33 has ended up in a title. His contract, I know, is up. He's trying to negotiate a new deal. Galatasaray is interested if they can't get a deal done. But I assume he's going to stay at Lokomotiv, and they're going to do everything possible to keep him there.
I prefer Lokomotiv, to be honest, because the Turkish league, I mean, no disrespect, I think the Turkish league is a decent league, and he'll be used to the atmospheres there as well. But the Turkish league, they do have a big, what's the word? They do have a big want for profile, kind of like China does. And it's not always about the talent they get. Like Robin Van Persie, they brought him in when he was absolutely finished. And Ento played in Russia, my bad. But there's a few other players that have gone there that were absolutely finished. Who?
Pepe.
Oh, Pepe, yeah, for sure.
Well,
Pepe's
actually was really good for Besiktas before he got hurt, so he's actually been a good signing. But in general, I mean, the other thing about Turkey, too, is that they do have a foreigner limit, right? And they have to be very selective about that. Yes, Farfan would be terrific for Galatasaray. They're fighting for the league. It's actually been a really exciting title race in Turkey. But yeah, I think if you were to pick one or the other, stay at the place where you're obviously settled, where you're going to be playing in the Champions League next year directly in the group stage because you won the title. I think it's a no-brainer.
I think Russia has more competition as well because in Turkey, you have Galatasaray, you have Fenerbahce, you have Besiktas, and you have Balasakir. But after that, who else do you have? I mean, you have a few other sides that may challenge you, but not much. They're like Bragas, basically. There's really only four strong sides in the division. Whereas in Russia, I'm looking right now, Zenit is in fifth. That's quite shocking, especially considering the hype that they had right before the start of the season for players like Driussi, Paredes.
Yeah.
And it just hasn't worked out for them. There's Krasnodar, CSKA Moscow, Spartak, and Dinamo, of course. I'll also throw in Rubin Kazan and Rostov, even though they've been awful this season. They've always been sides that have kind of challenged the top division, especially Rostov. Rostov took the title race a few years back, and it hasn't been until Noboa left them where they really began to fall. But yeah, I remember when they beat Bayern a few years ago, Rostov. So. They're no mugs at all. So I think they're definitely Farfan should stay in Russia, especially Lokomotiv is going to have Champions League football next year. Galatasaray probably will as well, but Lokomotiv, I think he's identifying himself with Lokomotiv for now. I think he should stay. I don't think he should become a journeyman. So I think he should just stay where he is right now and just win another title. Lokomotiv try to defend his title. I can imagine one of the Marichuk brothers will be off probably after the World Cup. So that's going to worry. But I think Fernandez and Farfan are going to stay there. So the side is going to be strong for years to come. Now, who else do we talk about? Peter, I'll let you go to this next one. Who do you think is the next one that we should talk about?
I think only because he is a locked on starter, and I myself had concerns about him. I think we should talk about Yoshimar Yotun.
Yes,
he has been absolutely tremendous for Orlando City over the last 6 weeks. I gave Brian a lot of flack for showing concern over some Peruvian players in the recent past, like Carrillo, Farfan, of course, Rui Diaz at the start of the Clausura, and they ended up kind of proving him wrong and going into sensational form. Well, Yotun was also in that camp for me because he started the season with Orlando kind of slowly. He was indisciplined. We saw that with Peru, of course, getting sent off against Croatia. And even when he came in to Orlando last summer, I mean, yes, they were struggling, and of course he has to adjust to a new team and country mid-season, but he wasn't the same player that we necessarily saw at Malmo. But that has completely changed over the last 6 weeks, and it's coincided with Orlando winning 6 straight games. Yotun is second in MLS in assists with 5 assists, primarily due to the fact that he takes their corners, and they've scored a lot of goals off corners this year. But he's instrumental in that midfield. Everything goes through him. He is so classy on the ball, very fluid, executes tackles very, very well, recovers possession, sprays the ball across the pitch. And he's doing this all in his regular role on the left side of a diamond. And I think that is also a major contributor to his turnaround, in that he was playing on the right side to start the season, which made absolutely no sense. And he did struggle. He moves over to the left, and the team starts playing well, and he starts playing well. So that's a good sight for Peru, that one of their key players is in form heading into the World Cup.
Yeah, he's improved a lot, especially in Orlando's winning run. Now, I can't say I've seen a whole lot of Yotun as much as you have. So I'll just throw it over to Christopher. Christopher, what do you think on this one?
It's been a good surprise to hear the American press kind of start talking about him, because obviously when they talked about Orlando, they would always talk about Kaká, right? Mm-hmm. But Yotun seems to have taken a bit of a leadership role within the team also, and so it's been kind of cool as a fan of Peru to hear the American press kind of get interested in Yotun and get interested in Peru itself, and in the history behind our historic return to the World Cup and all of that, and kind of see Yotun as a leader both in his club and as a leader also in the national team. I mean, honestly, what would we do without Yotun in the midfield for reals? I think he's a very important player. He's a key player, and he feels pretty comfortable in Florida. There's a pretty big Hispanic community. He said that he likes it there. He likes the weather. Who wouldn't like the weather in Florida, of course? Oh, yeah. But I think it's good. I think the only bad thing about all of this is that he scored a goal against Real Salt Lake, which is my local MLS team. So, that was disappointing. but other than that, it's like I was sad the Real Salt Lake lost because they've been doing really bad in MLS. But at the same time, I was really happy that Yotun got to score a goal with his team.
I did want to say, though, that, and this is not really Peru related. This is more like I'm segueing into a Peru argument here, that before, I want to say maybe even 5 years ago, the MLS is viewed as a retirement league, and some clubs still do this, like LA Galaxy, Chicago Fire are still having this problem. But signings like Yotun are the signings that the MLS teams need to make in order for the league to progress. I mean, this is like the new version of the MLS, where the signings like Miguel Almiron, Yoshimar Yotun. So maybe a few other Peruvians signing for the MLS isn't that bad a thought, because sure, the league is very Americanized, you could say, which is totally understandable. It's in America, of course. But it's
and Canada, Brian. Don't forget Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, those guys.
There's a huge market for Peruvian players. There's a good market for Peruvian players in the USA, of course. And as long as it's not someone like Paulo Guerrero signed for the MLS, then that is it has to be someone like of Yotun's quality, I think, and I think they'll be fine. And if they're designated players, it's even better, to get the respect and the starting minutes, because at this point they have to. So it's it's not. I don't think it's such a bad thing. The MLS is gonna progress like that for sure. Not like signing Fernando Torres or Schweinsteiger, winning the World Cup, Chicago Fire. That's not what makes the MLS good. But anyways, one more player we can talk about, and this is getting a lot of requests in the chat, so I've kind of been ignoring them for now. But no, we're not going to ignore this player, Pablo Hurtado. Do you think I don't think he'll take Carrillo's starting spot, but do you think he deserves to take one of Carrillo or Cueva's starting spot, given his form in Portugal this season? Peter?
I mean, based on his form, yes, because Carrillo's currently injured. He hasn't played for Watford. Javi Gracia doesn't consider him. And it's intriguing to me because he plays as a number 10 for Vitória de Guimarães, yet a lot of their attacks go down the wings because Heldon and Rafinha, two of their best players, play out wide. So a lot of their attacks filter through the wings. And as a result, Hurtado either drifts to the wing, or he will just quickly play it out to the wingers, who will then kind of cut in and score, or they'll pass it into whoever the central striker happens to be that day, and he will score. And yet, despite that, he has 13 goals in all competitions, 11 in the league, second out of all of his teammates behind Rafinha, and he has 5 assists. Again, second on the team behind Heldon. So despite this, he's still been able to contribute very, very well to the team. Yes, he takes penalties, which maybe skews the numbers a little bit, but he's converting them with relative ease. He's playing well, and with the few touches he does have on the ball, he's making the most of them. And I think the big sort of X factor for him is that you have a player who can play in 2 different roles. Now, when you name the 23-man squad, that positional flexibility is massive. So if you have someone who can play on the right and as a number 10, then that means that you can basically fill 2 spots with 1 player. And I'm sure Gareca is going to use that to his advantage when it comes time to name the final 23-man squad.
Yeah, and Christopher, do you have any comments on Hurtado before we can move on to the last bit of the podcast?
No, I think I would agree. I think Hurtado's in a great situation right now. The fact that he's scoring goals, which is something that we've always complained about with Carrillo, and the fact that Carrillo hasn't really played that many minutes right now this year in the season. I think that if I was Gareca, I would seriously consider replacing or giving Hurtado a permanent spot in the national team. Well, obviously, there's a lot of time till we see a few more friendlies and the World Cup and whatnot. But yeah, I think he's in a really good spot, and hopefully after the World Cup, we see him, maybe moving to a bigger club. Who knows?
All right, so before we end the pod, there's one more thing we have to talk about, and that is a request by Christopher Biscardo. We weren't planning on talking about this pod, but I'm totally fine with it. So, Segunda División update, there's Cienciano has not won a game yet. That's what we wanted to talk about. And what? Christopher's head nod right there. Cienciano has not won a game yet. Chicho Ibarra has been sacked. They're still not winning. What is going on? Christopher, what do you think is going on with the club?
Oh, my goodness.
They have a brilliant squad, but they're not doing it right now.
I don't know. I think Chicho Ibarra is not – he's just not that good of a trainer, Just to give a brief history of Chicho Ibarra, basically this Argentine guy that played for almost every club there was in Peru as a player, right? And then he also transitioned in his late 30s into being both a player and a coach at the same time. And he was kind of a novelty, right? I believe he still has the record for the most goals scored in the history of the Peruvian First Division.
It was weird because he's the top scorer in history, and it was crap. It tells you a lot.
And that's the thing, because he was old, and it was funny. He would score goals, and he would celebrate like an old man, like hunchback with his cane, just to show everyone that he was old and he was still scoring goals. But anyways, oh my goodness, it is really sad to see a team like Cienciano, such a historic team for Peru, doing so poorly, right? Of course, if you remember, Sport Boys was kind of in the same situation a few years back, where it was like 2 or 3 points, and they would have gone down to Copa Peru also, right? It's early in the tournament. Things can still be turned around. But Cienciano as a team, the whole team, it was so weird. Not this week, but last week in the game against Cesar Vallejo, it was almost like they didn't want to really, they gave him their space. It was like, oh, Cesar Vallejo has the ball. Okay, we'll just let him have it. There was no pressuring. The team seemed to just kind of stay back and let Vallejo create the plays, and then maybe try to pressure them, but not really. I don't know. It was really weird. But things turned around a little bit this week in their game against Guaralo on the road. They lost again, 1-0, better than losing 4-0 at home, obviously. And things are looking a bit better for Cienciano. And I'm really hoping that this will be they have a new coach, and I hope that with this new coach, things will improve for Cienciano. Now, you have Cienciano on one side, right? Historic team from Peru doing poorly in second division. And then you also have Hualgayoc, which is a small team from the small city in Cajamarca, out in the middle of nowhere, what some people would say, right? And they are doing amazing, right? They are second only behind because of goal difference from Universidad Cesar Vallejo. They have a Maltese Italian coach who also coached Sporancash during their great run in 2016. They have Ronaldo Calera, and they're doing really well. So it's been it's been kind of weird, but it's been pretty interesting to see the second division tournament.
Yeah, no, well, maybe this is kind of an uprising side. I can see them go up in a few years, if not this year. Cinciano luckily have the playoffs to make. I mean, that wasn't an option before. Now it is. So their season's not totally done yet. They still have a chance to make the playoffs and hopefully go up there. But we'll see what happens. So that's going to be the end of this pod. I'm your host, Luis Scola, and I will end the pod here. My Twitter handle is B_Bertie98. And Christopher, what's your Twitter handle?
I am VIZ_FC. I almost forgot, but not quite. I had this problem last week too, and Peter Galindo's been giving me crap about it all week. But anyways, what's your Twitter handle, Peter?
All right, go ahead. All right, Peter, what's your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle is @GalindoPW, and you can follow the show and the website @PeruWaltz.
All right, so thank you for listening to this podcast. We will be back next week. And for that, stay tuned. See you later.